What's good, all my soldiers? This is CGT Podcast, episode 30, and we popping it off today, talking about some relevancy to the news, and we're going to try to tie it back to history, the present, and the fucking future if we don't stop the bullshit. But overall, I'm pretty sure everybody is very aware about the news that's been out there that's going on with Haiti. You know, they like, oh yeah, the Haitian president got assassinated. So okay, yeah, that's news to people, right? So we're gonna use this information right here in order to dive into a whole new realm of understanding the influence and the power that you have living in a specific country like America. A specific country like America, the United States of America, which they call a country. In reality, it is a global military fascist state. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a global military fascist state. So it's cute because they're like, oh yeah, the president of Haiti got assassinated and all this shit. And then if you go ask the average person on the street who's not Haitian, or if they not from the DR or not from Haiti, you go ask the average person on the street, right? Like, what's going on in Haiti? Wow, they talking about adjust my content. I don't know. Maybe I got to stop cursing. But yeah, a lot of people are like, "What's going on in Haiti? What's going on in Haiti?" Like, that's kind of messed up how they just assassinated a president. And in reality, people don't even realize the actual history of it. People don't even realize, like, when they go into like a lot of these Caribbean cities and stuff like that, the only reason it's so nice and beautiful and peaceful there for you to go on vacation is not because of the fact that there's no corruption there. It's because of the fact that there's a lot of corruption there and it's hidden from you. And with that being said, we all, we all only hear about places like this when something negative happens for some reason. For some reason, we only hear about Haiti, places like Haiti, or a lot of places in Africa, or a lot of places in South, in the Pacific Islands of Asia. We only hear about places like this when something really messed up happens, something destructive happens. So we gotta question why this is. So with that being said, we about to dive into this stuff right here. We're about to dive into it, and everybody's gonna have something worth sharing with somebody else after they get done with this. So right now we're looking at the U.S. invasion and occupation of Haiti. Now this was something that took place between 1915 and 1934, right? Which is a coincidence. Like, why would we be occupying Haiti? You get what I'm saying? Y'all heard of Occupy Wall Street, right? So Occupy Wall Street, in a way, in a sense, was basically people going to Wall Street, protesting, trying to disturb businesses and take over that fucking area, which is called Wall Street, and basically control the situation, control the land. But with that being said, why in the world would America occupy Haiti? Okay, following the assassination of the Haitian president in July of 1915, President Woodrow Wilson sent the United States Marines into Haiti to restore order and maintain political and economic stability in the Caribbean. This occupation continued into 1934. Let's think about this now. From 1915 to 1934, we talking about 19 years. They spent almost 20 years in Haiti occupying and trying to do what they saying they trying to do. And it never worked. It never worked. To this day, it still never worked. Let's tie this in. Like I said, I'm not going to tie everything into the present now. We're going to stay in the past. Right now, you and I are personally in we in the early 1900s with this shit. So we got President Woodrow Wilson. The United States government interest in Haiti existed for decades prior to its occupation. As a potential naval base for the United States, Haiti's stability concerned U.S. diplomatic and defense officials who feared Haitian instability might result in a foreign rule of Haiti. In 1868, President Andrew Johnson suggested the annexation of the island of Hispaniola, consisting of Haiti and the DR, basically, to secure the United States' defensive and economic stake in the West Indies. From 1889 to 1891, Secretary of State James Blaine unsuccessfully sought a lease of Mole Saint Nicholas, a city on Haiti's northern coast, strategically located for a naval base. In 1910, President William Howard Taft granted Haiti a large loan in hopes that Haiti could pay off its international debt, thus lessening foreign influence. The attempt failed due to the enormity of the debt and the internal instability of the country. Okay, so we not really talking. So we talking about at a time now, like during the 1900s and stuff like that, where they just like basically told you that they had interest before the 1900s, and when they started creating a new banking system and shit, and they were spreading it to like these countries or these lands like Haiti and the DR and all the other places that they eventually took over or completely influenced due to military influence and drugs. Um, Before that, they basically had their eye on these places all this time, knowing that these places had valuable, irreplaceable resources, right? So this is around the same time where you have like Edward Bernays and the people starting to use like propaganda. But we're gonna get into that later. As a result of increased instability in Haiti in the years before 1915, the United States heightened its activity to deter foreign influence. Right? Heighten its activity. What does that mean? You get what I'm saying? We had to start thinking. What do they mean by heightened activity? They mean they started basically taking over more. They started putting people in positions that they wanted to be in positions. They started killing off people who opposed that basically. The invasion ended. Okay, Haitian President John Villeburn was assassinated, and the situation in Haiti quickly became unstable. In response, President Wilson sent the U.S. Marines to Haiti to prevent "quote unquote" anarchy. In actuality, the act protected U.S. assets in the area and prevented a possible German invasion in the eyes of America. That's what they telling. Even okay, so this is a government website, mind you. I'm reading this from an actual government website where they admitted themselves that the act protected U.S. assets in the area and prevented a German invasion. Now, the German invasion part, that could be subliminally meaning some other shit. But in reality, let's be real, bro. Germany at that time, I got a map right here on my fucking wall, bro. In order for Germany to even fucking get to Haiti, like with they fucking navy, with their navy, with their boats, that will almost be worthless. It would be pointless for them to do that. You get what I'm saying? Even at the time where they were actually like a powerhouse. You get what I'm saying? Okay. The invasion ended with the Haitian American Treaty of 1915. The articles of this agreement created the Haitian Grenadier. I don't know how to say that honestly. essentially a military force made up of U.S. citizens and Haitians controlled by the U.S. Marines. The U.S. Marines. The United States gained complete control over Haitian finances and the right to intervene in the Haitian intervene in the government with the okay wait my bad I got it mixed up. The United States gained complete control over Haitian finances and the right to intervene in Haiti whenever the U.S. government deemed necessary. The U.S. government also forced the election of a new pro-American president, Felipe Sadre something, by the Haitian legislature in August 1915. Basically, that's when he was elected. The selection of the president did not represent the choice of the Haitian populace. Increased unrest in Haiti began after they elected this fake president. Now, basically, that is the government. That's the government right there. That's the government page telling you how this shit started. It's admitting to you right there that the treaty that they signed in 1915 started this cycle that's still going on to this day. How is it still going on to this day? We're going to figure it out. Okay.
We spend $322,000 for each enemy we kill in Vietnam, while we spend in the so-called war on poverty in America only about $53 for each person classified as poor.
Every January, the Martin Luther King Day holiday is an important reminder that one of the defining characteristics of the American exceptionalism that Democratic and Republican politicians constantly mention is selective amnesia combined with historical revisionism. This year was no different. Dr. King, as he is celebrated in the U.S. by the majority of politicians and institutions, would be unrecognizable to King himself. Dr. King was a militant opponent of U.S. wars and militarism.
And I knew that I could never again raise my voice against the violence of the oppressed in the ghettos without having first spoken clearly to the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, my own government.
Martin Luther King was a fierce advocate for the poor, the forgotten, the victims of the fabled American success story that's celebrated by its white beneficiaries. King repeatedly risked his life, confronting not just race.
Now let's get this straight. Now we about to get this shit straight. We got to get this stuff straight today. It's not about no white beneficiaries. It's not about that. It's about all color beneficiaries. It's about fear. It's about power, energy. It's about controlling the flow of energy. That's what it's about. It's not about no white beneficiaries.
Racist policies or segregation, but the white supremacy that is ingrained in U.S. society to this very day. But King, the radical, the anti-imperialist, the anti-racist, is not the King that's celebrated today. That King wouldn't even be invited to his own memorial or the dedications of parks named in his honor.
We must also realize that the problems of racial injustice and economic injustice cannot be solved without a radical redistribution of political and economic power.
The real Martin Luther King, the King who J. Edgar Hoover tried to blackmail, wiretapped, and told King to kill himself, the King who described himself as a democratic socialist who believed in redistribution of wealth, the King who was assassinated, would today undoubtedly be labeled a black identity terrorist and shunned by Republicans and Democrats alike for being too radical, maybe even anti-American. When Martin Luther King was gunned down, his popularity was at an all-time low. He'd been largely abandoned by his friends in the civil rights movement and was regularly denounced in papers and on radio and television for being too radical.
Dr. King, former President Truman, was quoted by the AP as saying that the march from Selma, and this was his word, was silly and can't accomplish a darn thing except to attract attention. Now, there have been 2 murders, many beatings, and a
status in the U.S.
We will suspend the Syrian refugee program, and we will keep radical Islamic terrorists the hell out of our country, okay? Believe me.
Let's take Haiti, the first black republic in the world, the first country in the Western Hemisphere to abolish slavery, a country consistently targeted by violent, anti-democratic, racist U.S. policy ever since. Why don't we ever talk about the support that Ronald Reagan offered to the brutal dictatorship of Baby Doc, or how George H.W. Bush and the CIA unleashed murderous death squads in an effort to stop the democratic election of Jean-Bertrand Aristide, only to facilitate his overthrow in a brutal coup after Aristide won.
Okay, so that's where you have to understand now. So we have gotten to a point now, we're in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, all the way up to from the time where I just told you that the first person they put in power, elected by basically the powers that be in the American government, electing the rulers in Haiti, basically. They have been doing this since 1915. And now we're in the 1950s, 1960s, and these people actually got to the point, the actual citizens living on the land of Haiti, not the people who are occupying Haiti. Remember what we said occupying was. So with that being said, you have these people having a revolution, and then at the point to where they're having a revolution, you telling me that they actually get somebody who's for the people, who's gonna get their fucking, like, their whole fucking island and their country straight, bro. So they assassinate him because, once again, they, in their mind, they got the right to do this stuff because it's their treaty and you're breaking their treaty. And their treaty says that if you don't let us elect the people in your government, if you don't let us basically control your whole island, but you do everything we say, and while we're not there, you do everything we say, and you abide by these terms willingly. That's basically what they're saying. And if you don't do that, we're gonna bomb your shit. We're gonna call you terrorists. We're gonna say that your country is in anarchy and go there with our Navy and our Marines, and we're gonna assassinate everybody who is opposing the US regime, the US occupation, and everybody who is opposing the treaty. That's what they're gonna do.
Why don't we talk about how Bill Clinton would only allow Aristide to return to Haiti if he agreed not to seek re-election, or the inhumane way that Clinton treated Haitians fleeing the country and warehoused them at the Guantanamo prison in appalling conditions. And that's almost a decade before Bush turned it into an illegal gulag for suspected terrorists.
When the United States decided that if necessary we would use force to remove the military regime and to restore President Aristide and democracy, I was so determined that no one would think we were trying to revive any hemispheric imperialism.
Why don't we discuss the George W. Bush administration, once again supporting the overthrow of Haiti's democratically elected government in 2004, or the neoliberal economic policies pushed by Clinton Global and the Obama administration, or the story of how President Obama backed a corrupt government in Haiti as it used anti-democratic tactics in an effort to keep power.
It's a great pleasure to welcome President Martelly of Haiti to the Oval Office. Our two countries really brought about the trend towards independence in the Western Hemisphere.
No Democrats or Republicans ever want to talk about this history. Yes, Donald Trump is a racist, a horrid, overt, shameless racist. But let's be honest.
All right, so that's just part of it. We're gonna go to this next video. So what we get
Hello, everyone.
Now you understand the political side of it. Now you are not just, out here, basically crawling on the floor looking for information and just trusting any fucking news article you see. Now you understand some relevancy. Now you can look at it not from a point of view of somebody who actually lives there or who was born there, but at least from a point of view of how where you're from has affected them over time in reality. So, um, we're about to get more into it.
And welcome to episode 4 of the Short Banana Wars series. The Banana Wars were a series of US invasion/interventions in Latin America during the early 20th century. This series is meant to give a little insight as to what occurred during this event that in many ways have impacted the citizens of these nations until modern day. In today's episode, we'll be looking at the US occupation of Haiti. Between 1919 and 1915, Haiti was politically unstable. A series of political assassinations and forced exiles resulted in 6 different presidents holding office during this period. Various revolutionary armies carried out the coups, and they were enlisted by rival political factions under the promises of money which would be paid after a successful revolution. The United States was worried about German influence over the island nation. Haiti had around 200 Germans within its community, but these Germans held a massive amount of economic and political power. They had married into predominant Haitian families and built up a good portion of the modern transportation market as well as the ports of trade. The German Empire, in turn, had tried to exert some influence over the Caribbean since the 1880s against the wishes of the United States. Plans had been drawn up by Germany to actually attack the US at the turn of the 20th century, hint hint, click on the video I have about that subject here, but they were shelved shortly after the construction. American businesses' interests were also at odds with them, as the vast mineral and material wealth of Haiti was well known to many of the world. The Germans also served as the principal financiers of the nation's revolutions, floating loans at high interest rates to the competing political factions. Because of this, they were regarded as a threat to American financial interests. The US military leadership believed that Haitian Germans were tied directly to the government in Berlin. To counter this influence,
So basically, what they're saying is the things that America were doing in Haiti, there was a couple hundred other Germans in on the land of Haiti, and they were actually doing the same thing that America was doing, but they were doing it in a more conservative way. And America found that to be a threat somehow, and that also was for some reason for them to go over there and
the US sponsored
start
a New
murdering.
York-run group of investors to buy out the only national bank in Haiti, which would effectively put the nation's commerce under American investor control. In December of 1914, the US military seized the Haitian government's gold reserve and transferred it to the investors' bankers, as well as slightly assist Jean Fabram Guillaume, or just Sam, in becoming president in February the following year. Sam turned his presidency into a dictatorship 5 months later and ordered the execution of 167 political rivals, all of which were from the predominant families with German connections. Sam was killed by a mob in Port-au-Prince.
So let's get this straight. That is basically another way of America's. That's another way of America playing games and shit. So you're basically going to that country, putting a military leader or somebody who you know is going to do shit or do operations to get rid of your competition, and then after that, you could just say, "Oh my God, this country is still corrupt. We just trying our best to help them, but no matter what, it keep going bad. They just keep killing each other." But the whole time, that's just a way for you to get them to be to kill each other, basically. Instead of you having to go there and murder them with a gun, you don't have to do that. You could just go there take over their national bank, control their money, and then when other people start having values and shit outside of your money, you tell the rest of the people who are still using your money that this nigga right here, these people are corrupt. So that when the new person who that you have power to elect into, who that you 100% control, who gets into office, who gets the presidency seat. And you know what the president do? The president basically execute wars and shit like that. So with that being said, as soon as he get into office, he not doing no foreign war. He's literally signing shit to kill off the Germans that the Americans felt threatened by. And then after that, the people of that country is like, what the fuck? This is not what a president's supposed to be doing. We got all these problems going on. We got people who starving. We got people who actually need help. We got so many great resources, and all you doing is selling off the resources, and then you turning around and motherfucking basically killing people. That's your main objective right now, is killing people, and you're blaming these people. And the people of Haiti was like, nah, we're not going for that. We smarter than that, bro. Like, that's stupid. We gotta off this man. And then after that, guess what happened?
As soon as they learned of the executions, the United States regarded what had turned into an anti-American revolt against Sam as a threat to American business interests in the country, and sent forces to occupy the nation immediately. U.S. President Woodrow Wilson ordered 330 U.S. Marines to occupy Port-au-Prince on July the 25th. Wilson also aimed to rewrite the Haitian Constitution as it banned foreign ownership of land, but he wanted to replace it with one that guaranteed American financial control over the markets. As soon as U.S. Marines landed on the island, various groups fought against them and the later established island government for years. This period is referred to as the Cacao Wars, named after the band of peasant militia that largely made up these rebellious bands. It wasn't until the last Marines left in 1934 that these skirmishes and battles finally settled. In September of 1915, the U.S. Senate ratified the Haitian-American Convention, a treaty granting the United States security and economic oversight of Haiti for a 10-year period, and the U.S. representatives had total veto power over the Haitian government. Within 6 weeks of the occupation, the U.S. government seized control of Haiti's custom houses, including the banks and the national treasury. Under governmental control, a total of 40% of Haitians' national income was designated to repay debts to American and French banks, and would control Haitian external finances until 1947. Under the occupational government, civil conscription was put back into place, with a series of roads, bridges, schools, communications, and public works projects being built all around the nation. Thousands of citizens were also shipped off to work in the sugar fields in Cuba and the Dominican Republic, as the sugar crop didn't have the same export potential as
The Institute of World Affairs at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee presents International Focus, a weekly discussion of the people and events behind today's global headlines. Support provided by Milwaukee Public Television and the UWM Center for International Education.
I already know y'all got. Hey, I know y'all got time, though, bro. I know y'all got time. Like, I ain't even worried about it. I don't know why I'm over here talking about it's the last video. Y'all want some more videos?
Now here's your host, Doug Savage.
Resources.
Welcome to International Focus. 2015 marks the centennial of President Woodrow Wilson's invasion and occupation of Haiti. U.S. troops would stay for almost 2 decades, installing a client government, imposing new laws, and fighting an often bloody insurgency, during which an estimated 15,000 Haitians died. Although the occupation officially ended with the removal of U.S. forces in 1934, American foreign policy and economic interests have continued to impact Haitian history. To help us understand the factors leading to the 1915 invasion and the ongoing role the U.S. plays there, We're joined by two leading scholars of modern Haiti. Patrick Bellegarde Smith is Professor Emeritus of Africology at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. He currently serves as president of the Haitian Studies Association, which has honored him with its Lifetime Achievement Award for scholarship. He is also associate editor of the Journal of Haitian Studies. Hermite Saint-Jacques is visiting assistant professor in the Department of Africology at UW-Milwaukee, where her research and teaching focus on transnational migration and globalization, race and ethnicity, gender and...
It was only after the Haitian Revolution that Brazil takes off in terms of its...
And taken by the black sons of Haiti 90 years ago. Striking for their freedom, they struck for the freedom of every black man in the world.
No, I don't think this shit, bro. Hold on. I think that was another video. This shit right here, though.
Focus, 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 focus. We're here. We're here. I see you. We're here. We are here mentally. To be very honest, I have a lot of unpopular opinions about this show. Zuko should have been with Katara because they were the best couple ever and they had the most chemistry compared to Katara and Aang. Aang should have honestly just had like millions of concubines and just like slept with a bunch of women so he can repopulate the world with airbenders instead of just having one wife. I think he should have holed out and tried to save his people that way, but that's again my unpopular opinion. Let me just backtrack into what made me want to start this idea in the first place. America is essentially the Fire Nation. What is up, my beautiful people? Welcome back to my channel. I'm your girl, That's Otaku, and in this corner of the world, we like to believe that animated characters are way better than actual human beings. So, if you are new here, welcome to the family. Please consider subscribing, liking this video, sharing it with your friends so you can be all part of this crazy little family that we are trying to make bigger and bigger. Now, for today's video, we're going to talk about one of my favorite shows. We're going to talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender. Not the one with the blue people, not that Avatar. Avatar: The Last Airbender, the one that people keep debating is either an anime or a cartoon, but we all know it's a cartoon because it wasn't made in Japan. If you weren't on the Avatar bandwagon back in 2005 to 2008 when it aired, then you probably recently joined the fandom as of right now because it has been put on. Hold up. This shit's low-key woke. And I was also having those feelings. I was rewatching On the Planet, and he's also the Avatar, so he can bend all four elements.
Okay.
They had to share this wealth and prosperity with the rest of the world. That was the roots of his ideology in terms of why he wanted to start the war in the first place. Now, of course, Avatar Roku, who bends all four elements, is supposed to keep peace within the world. He was like, nah, I think the four nations should stay four. This is not what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to go ahead and intrude on other people's territory because you need all four to create some type of balance. You cannot have one out of balance because then that'll send the whole world out of whack. But Sozin was like, how dare you think that our country is not great enough to be able to spread our wealth and knowledge to everybody else? Why would you want to stand in the way of that? Are you not Fire Nation first? Fire Sozin has a lot of the mentality that a lot of Americans have. Not all, of course, but when you look at the state of American politics, we do not shy away from going to other countries, spreading our ideas of democracy. But then what happens is that we're just toppling down upon a bunch of people's governments, putting in place dictatorships and leaders that will coincide with what we think because we're the big bullies of this planet. That's essentially what we are. And that brings me to the point of this video. America is the Fire Nation. The Fire Nation is America. The people that created Avatar were trying to warn us. They were like, y'all better watch this country because if we don't get ourselves back in order, we could very well end up like that. You can go into and say that when Azula went into the Earth Kingdom Nation, the Ba Sing Se, when she went to the capital of the Earth Kingdom Nation and completely took down the Dai Li agents and turned the Dai Li agents' loyalty onto the Fire Nation, you could even say that that's pretty much foreshadowing or like similar to how we go around into these countries, infiltrate their governments, and have their governments instead serve us instead of the people that they are meant to be serving. Now, I could go on to this big old rant and continue to talk more about America has gone around and dismantled a bunch of countries and spread its own ideas of diversity and prosperity and being like, oh, we're number one. We're just trying to help the entire world when we're really not. I don't know any other country except really Haiti, and I'm still learning about that as much. It's very similar to how America went around and spread their ideologies and their helping hand to Haiti because In case you didn't know, which a lot of people don't, Haiti and America do have a lot of shared history together. When Haiti got their independence back in 1804, America was shook. America was straight up shook. They were like, how the hell did this country of black slaves topple France and then gain its own independence? If the slaves can do that in that country, in Haiti, what's to say that they're not going to try to do that in America? What's to say that our own slave system is not going to be able to stick around and we're going to be overturned as well? So they were absolutely scared. America and a bunch of other European countries, but America we're talking about, was absolutely shook when Haiti got its independence. And ever since then, America has been bitter and has done everything in their power to try to undo that independence and try to enforce its own idealism and control over this country that was full of black slaves. I'm saying that right now because that's exactly what happened. The way that America exerted its power and tried to spread its ideologies onto Haiti was mainly through the U.S. occupation of Haiti from 1915 all the way up until 1934. Now, this was started by President Woodrow Wilson, who had this idea or had this reputation of being a liberal and wanting everyone to have fairness, and that was kind of like his whole campaign. But except when it came to Haiti, he was like, nah, we're not about to let this black country of slaves try to tell us what and try to get their own independence and all that stuff. We were already an independent country for 100 years at this point. But America thought, let us try to help this country that is struggling, because at the time Haiti was going through some political unrest because, unfortunately, due to the French, we didn't really get much of an infrastructure of a proper government. So that's kind of what led to Haiti being in the state that it is today. But America had a hand in our downfall. America was like, I bet. I see that the Haitians are struggling. I see that they are not completely all together with their shit. Let's try to go in and try to fix it. Let's try to lend a helping hand. You have Woodrow Wilson going in 1915 with the U.S. Marines being occupied there. You had them seizing $500,000 at the time and holding it in New York to try to manage Haiti's money. And then on top of that, you have Woodrow Wilson trying to change the constitution of Haiti. Now, when Haiti got its first constitution back in the 1800s, they specifically wanted to make sure that no other foreign country could own land in Haiti because they wanted to maintain their independence as much as possible. What did America go and do? They went and tried to undo that constitution by making a clause saying that other people from other countries can go in and own land. The Haitian people were completely against that and did not want that to happen. But what happened was Woodrow Wilson decided to put in their own figurehead. Philippe Suje Datigwenab. We're just going to say that because I'm terrible at names. I can't say names at all. But they put in
Me too, sir.
this figurehead president that did not have Haitian people's intention at heart. This president was essentially a figurehead, a puppet. Kind of like how when Ba Sing Se had the king of Ba Sing Se was like the figurehead of the people and didn't really have any proper control, but the Dai Li agents were controlling all of the Earth Kingdom. Kind of like that, but the Americans decided to put in a Haitian so it can be like, oh, see, we have a Haitian president that's here for the people, but he's secretly going to be doing whatever we want, hence why he went around and campaigned for the dissolution of the legislature that would keep that clause in the Constitution to make sure that nobody would own land. From the pressure of America, America made sure that that president adhered to the ideals of America for the best interests at heart. So now what do you have? You have America having the right to essentially come in and help Haiti whenever they see fit and taking control of their money, their land, their power, and pretty much everything. Now, what does that sound like to you? Doesn't that sound a little bit kind of like how Azula went in, took over the Dai Li agents, and completely made sure that Ba Sing Se could adhere to whatever the Fire Nation would see fit? That's why they took over the entire Earth Kingdom. You see the connections that I'm trying to make here? Uncle Otto was saying that you cannot be doing this because the world will be at war with itself and the world will not have its own sense of balance. When the Fire Nation decided to spread its ideology to the Airbenders, the whole Airbender nation was wiped out. And now Ba Sing Se, which is the biggest city and the biggest part of the Earth Kingdom, is no longer Earth Kingdom territory. It's now being just another spot for Fire Nation. So that whole goodwill that they were going into completely went to shit because no one gained any good from this. Even Zuko himself said, That was such a brilliant lie.
Okay. One more goddamn video. Well, on this at least. Yeah, we're gonna go to this one right here. Y'all gotta see this personally. We're gonna get this. You're gonna understand this.
When I heard President Trump had insulted Haiti in the Oval Office,
the president asked, quote, "Why are we?"
So this is a part of their games and shit. They make segments on comedy shows as news reports, so that subconsciously you don't really take it serious. And if you do, you think, oh shit, because I seen it on TV and somebody's laughing about it, that somebody's going to do something about it. But it's not me. So, once again, this is Conan O'Brien.
We having all these people from shithole countries come here, referring to African countries and Haiti. The president then went on to talk about how they needed to bring in more people from places like Norway.
now I have no idea.
Now, mind you, you see how this man right here, everything Trump was doing, they had a segment on it. And this is how they try to make it seem like, oh yeah, during this time of this crazy fascist guy that we don't really agree with, the fascist part that you don't agree with, catch that part. And then they would make a news report and then they would go to the people in these countries or in the hood and make videos with, black people or people who are supposedly being, basically disturbed by Donald Trump. And they would basically make these segments. And you don't see this shit no more, bro. Because Joe Biden, bitch ass, not only do they not criticize his ass, but they literally try to make jokes about this man doing the most terrible of evil and the most evilest of terribles.
What the president has against the people of Haiti, but if the president doesn't like them, they must be lovely people. They really, it's just... A day later, I was exchanging dollars for Haitian goud, and before I knew it, I was in Port-au-Prince receiving a warm welcome and a bottle of rum.
Now this will last me this morning.
To understand today's Haiti, you need to know its history. This should only take a minute and 23 seconds. Before the Europeans came, Haiti was inhabited by the indigenous Taino people. Then the Spanish arrived, conquered the Tainos, plundered their gold, and brought in thousands of African slaves.
Catch that part. That gold, that resource. The Spanish came in, plundered their land and their gold. So when you read these history books and shit, and you think about all this shit that, they tell you about, oh yeah, this is the reason why. No, it was always going back to money, right? And you think it's different today? It's always going back to money. So even all the resources and the gold and the value that these people say that they have is all stolen from other people's land. It's all stolen. If you think that's it, it's not.
Then the French did the same thing when they took over. Then in 1804, Toussaint Louverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines led a slave revolt, defeated the French, and the nation of Haiti was born. But France demanded reparations, and Haiti had to pay them 91 million gold francs. All the while,
91 million gold francs. Mind you, at a time where the francs really wasn't fucking worth shit. So you're trading in and because of somehow reparations. Somehow France deserves reparations for coming over here, invading our fucking country, and destroying our land. We got to pay you reparations, or you gonna come over here and destroy us, right? That part sounds like a fucking joke, bro. If you really think about it. But then to even make it more of a backhand to the face, you telling me that my money is actually, you want me to pay you with gold while you're paying me with nothing? I don't get nothing in return? No infrastructure was built that I could use, nothing like that?
Black majority fought with the small but wealthy mulattoes, dividing Haiti, until in 1915 the U.S. invaded to impose stability, while also removing the gold from the Haitian National Bank. When the U.S. withdrew, Haiti was led by military juntas and mostly corrupt presidents, including Francois Papadoc Duvalier and his son Jean-Claude Babydoc Duvalier, who for the next 30 years siphoned hundreds of millions of dollars out of the country. And we're followed by a military government, more appointed presidents, military rulers, an elected leader, more military rulers, another election, then a coup d'etat, a UN peacekeeping force.
What a fucking travesty, bro, right? So now you know the history of that shit. Now you know the history of why Haiti is Haiti today.
Political
Even what it is today. But now we must understand.
The crisis has gripped Haiti.
New evidence. I mean, as if we needed more.
We're going to tie it back in, right? We're going to tie it back into the present day, to what's going on in Haiti today. You know, the president was assassinated. He was killed. And after we just got done looking at the history, we have to tie it back into the present. And what's happening today is a reflection of what happened then, because it's the same cycle over and over. But I don't want you to think of it in a way where it's like, oh, it's helplessly, like they just keep doing that to themselves because so a long time ago we did some fucked up shit to them. No, today we're still doing that shit. The occupation is still happening to this day. And it will never stop until either the people in Haiti start fucking somehow magically get crazy ass weapons that they can defend themselves and keep other countries away from them, or we can just stop fucking with them, or America could just stop occupying Haiti. They can give all of their land back to the people who are actually in Haiti right now. And then on top of that, let them decide who they want to be in power. Let them decide what type of government they want to run completely without no influence of it being democratic or whatever you want to call it. Let them choose that shit. But with that being said, that's the solution I think will be, easy. But doesn't have to be like that. Obviously, they can keep doing this shit right here.
As the country's president alleges coup attempt amid anti-government protests rocking the country.
So after this guy right here is like basically who's never mind. I'm gonna just
In a televised address, President Moise said that the coup plotters wanted to kill him. He added that he is not a dictator and people should only use democratic means to come to power.
Listen to what they saying. He said, maybe they don't want democratic means because they know that democratic means that the United States is going to keep forcing people into their presidency seat that they don't want to be there. And they know that means that's a result of us using a system that the United States created in the first place. If you think they doing that in Haiti, and you think they just hijacking the elections of Haiti and then occupying the fucking government of Haiti, you don't think they been did that in America a long time ago and still to this day? So that's what the whole democratic stuff is about. And their president, you have to look at it from a very natural point of view, energetically, the flow of energy. He's saying stuff that these people don't like. They don't like what he's doing, and they didn't like what he was doing, and they didn't like the stuff that he was saying. Let's see why.
2022, ça veut dire mandat, mandat 5 ans. Ça veut dire mon dictateur. Dictateur, c'est le monde qui prend pouvoir, ou pour l'aile pas pouvoir, mais par contre l'aile a quitté.
The government has arrested over 20 people, including a Supreme Court judge, for their alleged role in the coup attempt. Tensions flared in the troubled Caribbean nation after leading opposition leaders announced a plan to replace Moise with a new head of state, accusing the president of being authoritarian and presiding over economic chaos in the poor country. They called on people to pick a new president from one of the sitting Supreme Court judges instead of waiting for general elections scheduled for September. Violent anti-government protests took place in the capital as demonstrators demanded the president's resignation.
Je dis là, regardez qui gens, ils ont massacré nous avec un gaz. Qui monde qui prend balle, Gen moun ki la police même pousse brutalité sur la mafia là. Et nous même peuple là, nous déclarer mandat Jovenel fini. Nous pas quitter pays là, tout le monde est la rue, tout en Jovenel. Pas pouvoir parce que mandat Jovenel fini.
3 years of occupation by the Islamic State group in Mosul left the city deserted. Residents of Mosul are now returning after years of war and devastation. A team of volunteers are helping rebuild the city. Here's a report.
Iraq's Mosul witnessed massive devastation.
All right, bro. So that was a video showing that the people in Haiti basically they didn't like the president that the United States was putting in power. To this day, the same stuff that was happening in the early 1900s, mid 1900s, late 1900s is still happening today. And they still keep trying to go to the other people's land and do this imperialism, this oligarchy type government, imperialist international oligarchy type government. And somehow they think the people who are actually living their life in a way where they don't have to be influenced by the American culture are going to respect the American culture so outstandingly much that they're going to keep trying to force this stuff upon these people when they keep telling them, I don't want this. Now, mind you, okay. Now, mind you, they leaving crumbs upon the trail when they go to places like this and they do stuff like this. And once again, the main reason they do stuff like this is to extort value from the land. They're occupying the land to extort the value from the land. They already told you what happened on Conan with the gold. They still doing that today, to this day, bro. With the earthquakes and all that stuff, that happened there, and all the violence. I mean, they have a lot of hurricanes in the Caribbean and stuff like that. So this gives a lot of opportunity for this big country like America to have a cover-up excuse every time something fucked up happens, to go there and influence the country in whatever way that they see fit. Right? So this is right. This is their main tactic now. After they left with the treaty and everything, after they say they was like kicked out of Haiti or whatever, they already had so much influence there to where they had set up a perpetual chaos, basically. And they can keep making money off of this.
Of the pay-to-play politics, Hillary Clinton's State Department gave favorable treatment to, quote, friends of Bill Clinton after devastating Haitian earthquake. This is according to the newly released emails that we are seeing. Donald Trump taking aim at the Democratic nominee earlier today.
As people were dying in Haiti, Clinton insiders were separating out requests from friends of Bill or William Jefferson Clinton VIPs so that their business interests or contracts would receive very special treatment, while those who were not special friends would be put permanently on the sidelines.
Here now is Bernard Sansariki, is former president of the Haitian Senate. So I want to read to you the emails that we're talking about here, or at least some of them. It says, quote, you need to flag people who are friends of WJC. That's William Jefferson Clinton, of course. This is a senior State Department official who is juggling incoming offers to funnel assistance from the State Department over to these companies that were going to come in. And she says, most I could probably ID, but not all. This is an FOB with an exclamation point. An aide forwards a note later with a woman's offer for medical supplies. If she is not, she should go directly to CIDI.org. This is the regular government website, the way other people would enter and make bids for these products. But if you were a friend of Bill, you could come in, and what we learned later was that they were not competitively bidding for contracts, that they were just given these contracts. And in some cases, there was outright fraud of these people who came in through the Clintons. What is your opinion of that, and what did that do to the Haitians that were so desperately in need of help?
It has entirely crushed Haiti. In 2010, we had an earthquake that killed 315,000 people. That's really a deadly earthquake, and millions were left without shelter. President Obama named Bill Clinton as the one that should be in charge of the reconstruction of Haiti. And in that process, the Clinton Foundation, through U.S. taxpayers' money, and people giving money worldwide to the Clinton Foundation for relief effort to Haiti, contributed about $14.3 billion. We're talking about $1 billion, okay? And the Haitian people has not seen not even 2% of that money.
2%.
Nothing was done in Haiti.
Yeah. No.
So listen to what I just said. They are extorting the money, and they using these fucking events like this to raise 14. They're using the energy. They have $14 billion worth of energy donated to fucking Haiti. Do you understand what that means, man? And they haven't seen none of that. Where is that energy at? Where did they spend that energy? Where did they spend that energy at? Where did they transform that energy to? What is going on, bro? We gotta know. This has been going on for too fucking long, bro. It's been going on for too long.
And the New York Times has investigated this. Lots of other people have, and have found that it was donors to the Clinton Foundation that were then given these contracts, and they went
Exactly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Exactly, and actually they were given those contracts, they were given millions of dollars from that money, and nothing was actually done in Haiti.
Yeah.
Haiti, just like everything the Clinton have done, is pay for play, and they control Haiti, and they have been controlling Haiti since 1994 when they invaded Haiti. Yeah. Myself, I can tell you that back in August of 1994, I was always in contact with U.S. officials. Yeah. And
so now we gotta understand that. You will understand now how deep it is. Now you understand the pattern. So now you can start to see stuff like, oh, the Democratic Party seems to have a very, very heavy hand in a lot of these coups. Did the Democratic and Republican Party choose which countries they would be in control of being imperialist over? Because it seems as though the Democratic Party, even Woodrow Wilson, who's a Democrat, started this shit off. And then the president that they said killed off Aristide, you feel me? Or the president who they killed off, they first got them. The first president that the country and the people on the land of Haiti actually wanted to elect, they killed off that man, and then they put another puppet in place. Then after that, more unrest. Then another president or another person who actually stood for the people in Haiti rose up. They kicked that nigga out, and they put a puppet into place. And to this day, and what happened with the earthquake in Haiti? And to this day, I'm starting to question whether that shit was even an earthquake, bro. I know earthquakes I know Mother Nature is powerful, but let's be real, bro. Like, we got to start considering the fact that could have been something else. That could have been something else. That could have been a weapon. We got to consider that. Because there's so much energy that was used off of that one event. It's crazy. And you got to understand this. Barack Obama was in office at that time, and he is a Democrat. Just so happened to be a fucking Democrat somehow. Catch the patterns.
One of the person that came to...
I'm not saying, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, and you should understand the history when it comes to like what are the Republican agendas? What countries are their focus points on when it comes to this foreign policy shit that they say?
see me in Haiti and talk to me for about 4 hours was ex-former Congressman Bill Richardson. And I explained to Bill the exact situation that was happening in Haiti. A week later, a messenger from the U.S. Embassy came to me with a message from Bill Clinton, offered to buy me out, make me the richest man in Haiti.
Okay.
I refused. I said to tell Mr. Clinton I am not for sale.
Okay.
A week later, my visa, at that time I was not a citizen of the United States. My residence visa was revoked by executive order from Bill Clinton.
Sir,
I mean, what the Clinton have done in Haiti is unbelievable, and the American people should know about it.
Yeah. Absolutely. We're up against a hard break. It's going to cut us off. I hope that you will come back and tell us more about your story because this is so important. The foundation.
Definitely.
See, Fox, even at that time, they were only trying to use that energy, his life, his story. They were only trying to use his energy to make a point in a favor of Donald Trump going against Hillary Clinton. That's the only reason. You know what I'm saying? And that's sad. They cut this man off in the middle of him. He could have taught so many people so much just by continually talking, but they cut him off because they got their point across. They used his energy to get their point across at that point. This is crazy.
There is a lively debate questioning what Hillary Clinton really stands for. Perhaps the Caribbean island of Haiti can provide some insight. The Democratic presidential candidate, whose husband chairs the Clinton Foundation, has recently been advocating for a minimum wage increase in the United States. However, a WikiLeaks report reveals that back in 2008-2009, when she held the post of Secretary of State, she opposed minimum wage increases in Haiti. The wage important step forward for a country with one of the highest rates of poverty and inequality in the Western Hemisphere. Instead, under Clinton's guidance, the State Department colluded with foreign corporations benefiting from sweatshop labor to pressure the Haitian government to veto a wage increase approved unanimously in the country's parliament. Now, just months later, in January 2010, Haiti was hit by a devastating earthquake resulting in the deaths of roughly 200,000 people. Well, the Clinton Foundation was responsible for channeling some $6 billion meant to assist the survivors on the island. So where did the money go? Well, the Clintons' first act was to provide what they claimed were hurricane-proof emergency trailers, which they say could also have been used to school the island's children. Didn't turn out too well. The trailers were laced with a cancer-causing chemical, formaldehyde, which gave the students and teachers headaches and allergic reactions. And it turns out that the trailers were distributed by Clayton Homes. That's a company being sued in the US for providing the same type of shoddy trailers after Hurricane Katrina. They're also a past campaign contributor of Hillary Clinton herself. So what does Clinton stand for? We'll let you decide.
And when he says Clinton, let's get this straight. Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, George Bush's, the Bush family, the Trump family, the Obama family, these are representations of the oligarchy of America. What do they represent? That's what he really means. Don't let these different parties and shit fool you. This is the oligarchy versus the proletariats, or whatever they call that shit. Don't let it confuse you, bro. Don't let it confuse you. So, the president who was assassinated supposedly was a dictator and all this stuff, right? We piecing it all together that this man was a banana. He was in the banana business itself, and places in the Caribbean are known for their bananas. And with that being said, he was going into you have to read this article right here in the New York Times. We piece it together and we find out in the New York Times article. You can go back and read it at your own pace. I'm trying to find a specific part though. So it found people found out that he was extorting funds from the Petro Caribbean Fund, which is basically the gas companies that these countries like Haiti and shit have. And he also took money from the Venezuelans' oil donation. They said he was embezzling money. That he also had two companies that were built to build meaning like charged to build the same road twice. The report said, which critics believe was a scheme to generate money to pay for his campaign. People wondered, what was a banana company doing building roads? He was also accused of using powerful violent gangs to suppress political opposition. So we're looking at a cycle, man. We're looking at a cycle. The people in this country are accusing these people of doing what they doing, which is basically carrying out the orders of the United States when they elect their fucking hitman and their fucking puppets, basically. And this is never gonna stop until we realize and understand the situation and become politically conscious of what's going on in the world and not let these ideologies slip into the hands of the oligarchy and make their impact more impactful than ours. Because no matter what, these motherfuckers gonna die and we're gonna be left behind. And when they're gonna point the finger at our land saying the people in that land produce people like these people of the oligarchy, we got to get rid of these motherfuckers. And that's the truth. That's the truth. With that being said, this has been CGT Podcast. Episode 30.